What's going on, everybody? I'm Jerry, and today I'm going to be doing my Week 5 recap of every game from Week 5 in the NFL. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Check out some of my other videos. I do power rankings. I do weekly picks. This is going to have some of the biggest winners and losers in here, and then as well as I've got a top 10 trades video. I've got I've got some more videos coming out. So make sure to subscribe. Got a lot of great content coming out. Let's get right into it. Starting off, we had the Bears Commanders. I got this pick wrong. I thought that the Commanders were going to win. This is the first week I picked against the Bears, and the Bears just kind of murdered it. So I put, they were dominating on offense early on, just like last week against the Broncos, and but the defense almost blew it. So it was very similar to the Broncos last week, where in the second half you start to see the Commanders coming back. But Bears were able to hold out in this one. I put 1-2 punch because Justin Fields threw for 281 yards, 230 of them being to DJ Moore. Let's see, it was 8 receptions to him. He only completed 15 of 29, and the other 7 receptions were 5 to Cole Kmet, 2 to Tonyan. So a little one-sided over there. Nice to not see as many screen passes, to the running backs and whatnot. Granted, a lot of the running backs were injured, and that's the other part of there is the injuries. Injuries were horrible for Chicago. So pretty much all their running backs out to the point where their fullback was actually getting carries. So Donta Foreman hadn't been able to play. Roschon Johnson was in concussion protocol. Khalil Herbert is going to be out for a few weeks with something on his leg. I can't remember. I think it's an ankle. And then who am I missing? Yeah, it was just a bad week of injuries. Pretty much the entire secondary in Chicago was also out. So that was another hindrance that they had. But the backup DB stepped up and played a great game. And then for the Commanders, it was kind of the opposite. They looked horrible early. They really played bad, turning the ball over and just not able to produce any offense. I put no run game, and I threw that in there at the end. But they had 10 carries total for 29 yards. And I think Howell had more carries than Brian Robinson, which is also just horrible. That's not the way it should be. As I said, they started coming back in the second half. It just wasn't enough, and the defense just flat out lost the game. Sam Howell he had the most passing yards, passing attempts, and he actually played a good game aside from a few mistakes. But the defense, when you let up 40 points, especially with that strong front seven, you would think that with the struggling Bears offensive line this year, they would have been able, or at least just the defensive line, would have been able to rush the quarterback better. But it just wasn't enough. They were kind of getting burnt by DJ Moore. But I wouldn't overreact if you're a Bears fan, only because Fields only threw it to DJ Moore. So we're going to need to see a little bit more variety, and I think kind of setting up for that. Now you're going to see DJ Moore get doubled more, I think, after 2 back-to-back very good weeks. But, Chicago looked great. Moving on, the Jaguars and the Bills, another loss for me. There's a big streak of me getting things wrong this week, which is great. Also a good streak. So Jaguars-Bills out in London, came out hot on offense. T-Law was just slinging it everywhere. And then they kind of plateaued a little bit. I think it was closer to halftime. And then Etienne was the one that just went off. I put T-Law, then struggled there. 3 fumbles, and it says TD. That's horrible that he turned the ball over 3 times. Well, he fumbled 3 times, lost it twice, and then he only scored the 1 touchdown. Kind of set up to lose the game without the great performance from Etienne. Probably the best, or one of the best of many running backs this week that just played very well. And then I put very strong defense for the Jaguars playing against a Bills team that's been very strong. It kind of turned into the Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs show, as it often does, because the Bills weren't able to run the ball. I put it there, 0 run game. The team altogether had 14 carries for 29 yards. Not going to have success if you're running the ball like that. You'll see later in the video I have an interesting stat about the run game that I've been following this season because it's pretty important. But no tight end use. You've got 5 of the 27 receptions were to your tight ends. Dawson Knox is still a talent, and you pick up Dalton Kincaid in the draft. So I think they need to get a little bit more usage. Targets, I think, was about just as bad. I think it was like 7 of 36 or something for targets. So I'd like to see the tight ends get used a little bit more. They kind of got one-sided with Diggs and Gabe Davis, and it was working. But then I put there the defense had an underwhelming performance for a Jaguars team that's been struggling. The run defense needed to be better. ATN shouldn't have been running all over him like that. And early on, Trevor Lawrence, I mean, he could just throw it wherever he wanted and was having success. So another one wrong. Jaguars take the W. Titans, Colts. I really thought the Titans were going to win this one, especially with questionable for Anthony Richardson. I did mention last week that I thought that the Colts might have even looked better, and this year could be better with Gardner Minshew in, just because he has had a lot of success in the NFL so far. And everybody was saying pre-draft that Anthony Richardson might need a year. And I think if he's not 100% ready to go, it's going to be more beneficial for him to sit anyhow because of the injuries. And he had an injury problem in college too, and right now that's just kind of transferring over. So you hate to see it, but that's what's going on. D-Hop went off, 8 receptions, 140 yards. Tannehill throws the costly interception, and then kind of ruins the game. I put Tannehill's on a roller coaster because it seems like every other game he plays really well, and then the other one he just stinks. And I think I've been calling for, in the weeks where he does bad, I've been calling for Will Levis because I'm sure fans want to see him. He's going to be the future. It looks like Tannehill still can win games, but he's very inconsistent. And they're kind of at a weird point where you still have Derrick Henry and you want to try to make a playoff run because you have one of the best running defenses in the league. And, you can still find ways to win games. But you almost want to put Levis in there just to see how he can develop, see what he can do. Tajay Spears has been coming in too and kind of getting more reps. So I think it's going to really depend on how their record goes. If they go on a losing streak, I definitely think you could see Levis come in. But Minshew Mania over there, he didn't even, he didn't do increasingly better than Anthony Richardson anyway, but he did play very well and ended up getting him the win. I put a bit of a hot take, but Zach Moss over JT. Zach Moss, I have a stat coming up later for David Montgomery, and I thought that he was by far going to be the one of the best bell cow backs this year, but Zach Moss made a case for himself as I didn't capitalize the M. That's all right. I'll accept my errors here. Didn't capitalize the T in Titans either. This is rough. I should do some revision on this stuff, but that's okay. Maybe next time. Zach Moss has been playing phenomenal so far. So they get Jonathan Taylor back. Didn't really factor him in. Didn't really feature him very much this week, but I think we're going to start to see him slowly work his way back in. But going off of recency bias, you have all the problems with Jonathan Taylor, and he got paid, so he's happy. But he really didn't look very good last year. And so far, Zach Moss has looked good, and they just got a win, granted against the Titans. But a win is a win. So we got to figure out, is it better to go Minshew and Zach Moss and just wait for Anthony Richardson to be healthy and maybe you still phase Jonathan Taylor in? But with how Zach Moss is playing, seems difficult to sit him. Last thing is I won the game the way the Titans did because the quarterback in Minshew and Anthony Richardson just kind of threw the ball where they needed to throw it, similar to Brock Purdy on the 49ers. Get the ball to your playmakers, make plays. Josh Downs had a phenomenal game. And then they ran the shit out of the ball. Balls don't shit. They ran the air out of the ball. And ended up winning the game, like I said, the way the Titans normally do. Normally, Titans just run the ball, ground and pound all day long, and then throw the ball when they need to and get the win, and that's what the Colts did. End up getting the win, and I get wrong. First one right here, we get the Saints. Didn't predict it to be this much of a blowout. I did predict them to cover the spread. But the defense just dominated, and it's tough to tell if the defense dominated or Mac Jones just stinks. They capitalized on all the mistakes that Mac Jones was making. I'm still not sure on how their offense is because they were playing against a very defeated Patriots team that just could not put anything together. And you can see I put Bill Belichick on the hot seat. It's crazy that we're thinking about that, but that's kind of what it's looking like. There's already people calling for him like, hey, He's getting old, and look at how this team's going. Maybe he needed Brady. What's going to be next? Are we going to allow them to tank or whatever you want to say this year? And then let's say, best case scenario, for them, they get Caleb Williams. Can Bill Belichick, produce and create a good defense again, or have a defense that produces again, so your offense can be able to shine a little bit better. But I mean, 0 red zone trips. That is the entire team, the entire game. The New England Patriots were never in the red zone. That blew my mind when I read that. They had 3 turnovers, just Mac Jones alone, and they couldn't get pressure on defense. 2 quarterback hits, no sacks, 2 quarterback hits, was just an absolute mess of a game. And you'll see how far the Patriots shift down in the power rankings, because that game paired with their last game really hurt them. You'll see a fun fact at the end too about the Patriots. Next game, bit of an upset here. I guess Steelers were at home, but an upset because of how good the Ravens have looked. Ravens had looked good so far. I had them in my top 10. I believe I had them 8 in my power rankings, but they had costly turnovers. Lamar fumbled a couple times, and I believe he threw a pick too. And just you can't make all those mistakes and expect to win. It was a very winnable game for them. I put Pickett to Pickens on the other side because he was the main target. He had all sorts of yards, 136 or 63, bunch of yards. I think it was 136. And the game-winning touchdown, of course, was the big one. But they let Kenny Pickett get comfortable. He has not been amazing under pressure so far, and the Steelers had problems with third down conversion rate. And after this game, they just looked a lot better. I don't think you can credit it to the Ravens defense not playing good. I think both teams, it was a very close game. It just Steelers made the plays when it counts and capitalized on mistakes, played winning football. That's really all I had for the Steelers, just because it was a close game, and it's tough to give the knock the Ravens for this one, but the Steelers beat them, probably shouldn't have, and it was a winnable game for the Ravens, and they lost when they should have won, which isn't normal for them. So Steelers take on the dub, I get another loss. And we move on to the Texans-Falcons, where I get another loss. I was not great with the picks, at least these early games. Time of possession killed the Texans. They couldn't convert on a third down, but they statistically won the game. So I threw that in there because if you look at the stats of the game side by side, they really did play better. You can see I put for the Falcons 3 fumbles, 2 lost, and Ritter had to be the one to kind of win the game for them. Their run game was not very good, which is what was their strongest point in previous weeks, the Falcons. So, and then the last thing was the horrible pass rush on both sides. It made it a lot easier for both quarterbacks. Like I said, it's just when it counted, the Texans were not able to convert on third down, and they were constantly getting off the field on offense and couldn't get off the field on defense. And the Falcons were able to do that, and that resulted in the victory for them. I did end up getting the spread here. I picked against the spread, so the 2.5 I still got credit there, but yeah, another loss, but a win for the Falcons. So good game for the Falcons. This one seemed like an easy pick. Panthers really need a wide receiver too. They're very one-sided with their throw the ball to Adam Thielen. It kind of looks it's starting to look like Matt Stafford to Cooper Kupp, just throws it to him all game long. And if you can make that work in your offense, then great. I mean, they did score 24 points against the Lions, some of it in garbage time. So they were close early on, and I don't know why I put the Texans for forced turnovers out of the box there. That's okay. The defense was just getting torched. The Lions were just running, passing all over them. David Montgomery has been phenomenal. The turnovers are what killed the Panthers. And, you look at the game 42-24. That's pretty good considering the Lions have been one of the better teams in the NFL this year, and the Panthers are regarded as the worst. It's not really that bad. It was closer than expected. I put Monty as the best workhorse back because although he didn't play week one, he's played in 4 weeks. He has 88 carries for like 370 yards, which is one of the best. I think that's the most attempts per through 4 games. So like the rushes per game, I believe is how that stat would be, and he's just very consistent. He's constantly getting like 4.5 yards per carry ish in every game, and that's where he's been. I mentioned Zach Moss earlier. He has 1 more carry in 4 games. He has 89, and he does have a lot more yards, but he has 2 games where he just went absolutely off, and 2 games where he didn't really look very good. And I think in a franchise where you've got the Lions who probably want to make a playoff run and start to actually look like a team, you're probably going to take the more consistent, dominant running back versus, could have a huge flash or an off week. I also put Laporta might be in the Andrews, Kelsey, Hockenson tier because I drafted Laporta in the last round of my fantasy league that I'm in because I was looking at that and like Sam Laporta was dominant in college. The Lions just traded away Hockenson and they used him well, so they know how to use the tight end position, and they're proving that to be correct because Sam Laporta is one of the best tight ends in the league right now, and it's definitely too early to say Sam Laporta is going to be the next Mark Andrews, Kelsey, Hockenson, but right now, so far, looking at what's happened this year, he has played incredibly well for how early on it is, and he's basically just filled into a TJ Hockenson slot. He's the highest paid tight end in the league. So again, not the best, but he's very good. Made plays there. I put the Lions were able to force turnovers because they forced a couple fumbles, the interception. So big plays from the Lions, big win, and I finally got one right. Next one was a very, very easy pick. Dolphins, Giants. Giants are the biggest mess in the league right now. You could argue for the Broncos, but the Giants just can't put anything together. I did put it that it was a surprisingly close game because there was a point where it was a 1-score game about halfway through the game, and they didn't really play that bad. I mean, they still made their big mistakes like they always do, but I don't know, 16 against the Dolphins just seemed better than what they had been doing. So I don't know if it's even really a step in the right direction, especially with Daniel Jones being out. Might be for a while. I don't really know what that team's going to be. It sounds like, they're going to be into a tanking mode, but you don't expect them to tank for Caleb Williams because they just paid Daniel Jones. I don't know how that's going to work out. But I also put it doesn't look like they're tanking because it looks like they're trying. They just really stink. So Giants get another loss. I think if you want to just get an easy money line pick every week, probably just whoever's playing the Giants because even playing against if they'll play the Commanders. I don't see how they're going to beat anybody. Any lower tier team. So bad pick 6 by Tua at the beginning. Tua didn't really have a great game. He had the 2 interceptions. That's part of the reason that the Giants have points. I mean, you get aside from the pick 6, they have 9 points. So I guess that's kind of maybe inflated. That's why I put, surprisingly close game. But that was early on. You'd think maybe some motivation and a confidence boost would look good. A-Chain and Hill go off. A-Chain was just nuts. Same with Tyreek Hill. I put the defense was underwhelming. That's not really true. I think it's just, for some reason, I was expecting something more. Granted, the Giants did not do very much on offense. But I look at the Dolphins' defense, and they consistently are one of the lower tier defenses in the league, and they have a lot of names out there. I guess I'm expecting more. I don't even know if to most people they would be considered underwhelming, but at this point, it's underwhelming to me. I would have expected it to be a little bit better. If you look at their at least just looking at the statistics, they're towards the bottom of the league in rushing and passing, and do still have some flaws. So I think the Dolphins are a little overrated, but they are still a absolutely dominant football team with their Legion of Zoom and all of their speed on their team. So Dolphins take the dub over the Giants. Moving on to Bengals Cardinals. Bengals finally get a win. Jamar Chase is back. 3 touchdowns. Phenomenal week for him. The defense showed out. Jamar Chase obviously being in the thumbnail. We got DJ Moore in there too. I didn't mention him, but he had a phenomenal week as well. Defense showed out. Debatable. I mean, it's mainly just the turnovers that they forced. People hadn't really been able to force turnovers on Dobbs, and they were able to get a couple. I think it was three turnovers that they got, which Dobbs hadn't been doing. And if he didn't do, it might have been an even closer game, because the game was very close even towards the end. It was a one-score game towards the end. Obviously, the Bengals get that last touchdown, but the Bengals just kind of dominated time of possession. Dobbs made a couple critical mistakes. Could have been a very close game, and I think a Bengals loss would have sent them maybe in a spiral, or maybe it would have been enough to get some motivation for them, but didn't look very good. I threw in there the James Conner, only 6 carries for 46 yards. I didn't watch this game. I had some family business this weekend, so I couldn't watch this game, but I looked through some highlights, and I could not figure out why he only got the ball 6 times. Because if you think about all the names on their offense, he's probably the best player. So the fact that he got 6 touches and he averaged like 8 yards a carry, it's like, why didn't we give him the ball more? So yeah, that bothered me. You think maybe if there was a couple situations where they run it, where Dobbs, then he doesn't fumble there, or he doesn't throw a pick. And even if they score one more touchdown, it was 27-20 towards the end of the game. So, one more score, they tie it up, and it's a completely different situation. But Bengals end up taking the dub over the Cardinals. Good game, though. Cardinals stayed in it, but the Bengals take the dub. Eagles beat the Rams, which I think we expected. Cover the spread. Time of possession was what got the Eagles the win. I put in there Brown, Goddard, Swift, Hurts, because if you look at the stats, I think there was like 4 receptions other than those 2 players. And running, I don't think there was anybody else. Oh, Kenneth Gainwell had like 7 carries or something, but that was literally the offense. It was A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, DeAndre Swift, Jalen Hurts. Devonta Smith had 1 reception, I think, on 3 targets. And I put the tush push in there because they just keep using that. And that has got to be the most unstoppable, probably the most unstoppable play ever in the history of football for a team. Because you got Jalen Hurts, who can squat 600, 700 pounds. And then you've got the best offensive line in the league, especially behind Kelsey, who is just an absolute dog. So, you look back in history, like what would be a more dominant play than the tush push, at least in short yardage situations. I think you could talk about it almost like the sky hook, like Kareem, in basketball. But it's working for him, so I had to throw it in there. I put for the Rams, Cooper Kupp is back. Didn't really have a lot of mistakes. They just got outplayed. It was still Puka Nacua was in there. Cooper Kupp played well. Kyron Williams didn't play up to par. He had those couple good weeks, but he hasn't been amazing. The Eagles are just a tough team. I still think that the Eagles are a bit overrated. I think they've played, they've gotten some wins against some lower talented teams, and they've played in close games against teams that games that shouldn't have been close, in my opinion. So they're still 5-0, but with how high the expectations are, I think their point differential isn't really that great either. So I still think the Eagles are a little overrated at this point. You can check out where I have them rated in the power rankings video that's going to come out a couple days this week, and then you can see where they're at in the one from last week. But the Eagles outplay the Rams and end up getting the dub and covering. Jets versus Broncos, 31-21. End up getting the dub. I expected the Jets to win just because of how much of a shit show the Broncos have been. Breece Hall had 22 carries, 177 yards, and a touchdown. He just absolutely went off. That was fun to watch. I put the Zach Wilson roller coaster because he, at the beginning of the game, he threw a pick, but then he was throwing these absolute darts that were just right on the money, and he was kind of all over the place. Still not a consistent quarterback, but definitely showing those flashes that you'd want to see if you're a Jets fan of him playing well. You still anticipate on Rodgers. He's saying maybe come back this year, but at the very least play next year. And I don't know how that's going to work with a Zach Wilson contract, but you'd really like in a perfect world for Zach Wilson to maybe learn behind Rodgers. Maybe let's project way out into the future. Maybe Rodgers comes back next year. Zach Wilson sits, and the whole year he's just learning about all the mistakes that he made this year and everything that he could learn from. Could be a good situation for Zach Wilson, and probably one of the only things that's going to project his career. I think he's in a great situation over there with all the talented receivers, the dual threat of Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook, even though Dalvin Cook has not done anything this year, and then the strong defense that Bob Saleh runs. So I just put Russ stinks, because Russ, he just stinks. He sucks. You have Sean Payton just screaming at him at the fumble. You just throw the ball away. You don't fumble the ball and give it to the other team and blow the game. P. Ryan led in receptions and receiving yards. That, or might not have got, I know he at least had receiving yards. Not acceptable that you're running back. It's just kind of portraying what Russ did last year and just throwing it to, dumping it off to the receivers because he couldn't throw the ball down the field. Similar to another Sean Payton quarterback, Drew Brees, in the end of his career, when he just couldn't throw the ball down the field anymore. Just threw it to the running backs, and that's what Russ looked like. I don't think that's the case yet, but when your backup running back is leading the receivers, it's a problem. Overrated win for the Jets, in my opinion. I had to throw that in there because they were kind of very hyped, and there was a lot of talk, way too much talk, in my opinion, about Zach Wilson, because he was throwing some accurate passes, but made a lot of mistakes. And I don't think he wins that game against a better team. Broncos have one of the worst defenses in the league, so I just don't see the hype around beating the Broncos at this point. They're not a good team, so. But Jets do get the win. I got that one correct. Chiefs, Vikings. Chiefs locked down Jay Jettis. He had 3 receptions for like 28 yards, which has got to be the worst game that he's had in a long time. Chiefs did play a very sloppy game, though. 10 penalties is just way too many. And I put poor pass rush. Kirk doesn't do good under pressure. That would have helped. I put the old Kirk is back, though, because of his just consistent ways to lose games. Has an opportunity for a game-winning drive and just blows it. It was very one-sided on offense. They could have won the game, but again, Kirk blew it. I'll just make this one quick. I think this one probably, it might almost hurt the Chiefs more than the Vikings because it shouldn't have been that close with how bad the Vikings have been. We've known that the Vikings have been able to keep games close, but the Chiefs shouldn't have allowed it to be that close. So I do think that this one hurts the Chiefs more than it hurts the Vikings. You'd almost say it's a good thing for the Vikings that they were able to be that competitive and in a close game to the end with reigning Super Bowl champions. So Chiefs end up getting the win 27-20. Moving on to the Cowboys 49ers, I put Dak stinks, offense stinks, defense was humbled. I've been saying it all year. I don't think that the Cowboys offense is good, and I think any reason that their defense is their offense is playing good is because of their defense and how good their defense is against what so far this year have not been great teams. We talk about their dominant wins, especially like against the Giants, against the Patriots, but we look, Patriots had that happen again this week against the Saints, who we do regard as to be a good defense. But they pretty much did the same thing that the Cowboys. So how good are the Cowboys' defense? Not good if you look at the 42 points scored on them. So defense is still phenomenal, and that's what's going to continue to win them games. But this proves my point from weeks in the past where I was like, I really would like to see the Cowboys go up against a team that has a good defense and that also has a good offense to where you can actually judge how much of the Cowboys' wins is their defense just playing good and their offense is set up in really good positions, and how much of it is their offense playing well. And clearly not much of it at all is their offense playing well. Tony Pollard only had 29 yards because they were playing from behind, so they were just passing the whole game. And then they put in Cooper Rush and the rest of the backups. So 49ers end up taking down the dub. True juggernaut. Even the depth played well. Who can stop them? That's really just all you need to know. I think that the 49ers they're just like, I should look up their odds for Super Bowl, because right now it's just like, I don't see how you stop them. Even when the backups were put in, as long as Brock Purdy's there getting the ball to the playmakers, they have so many, like, what if Debo goes down? Oh, then he only gets to throw it to McCaffrey, Ayuk, and Kittle. Kittle, 3 catches, 3 touchdowns on his 30th. Phenomenal game for him. Tyrion Davis-Price. I really like Ty Davis-Price. He's their third string behind, I don't even know their backup. I don't remember his name either, but he played well. So that kind of shows how good the offensive line was. But Ty Davis-Price out of LSU, he's their third string, and he was looking good running the ball. So great game for the 49ers, not so much for the Cowboys. This really hurts them on my power rankings video you'll see soon, just because I think they're a bunch of frauds, the fraud boys. And then the game that was tonight, Packers-Raiders. I expected the Packers to win. I think my prediction was like 31-21 or 31-20, something of the sort. Packers hadn't scored that few points in a game this year. They'd always scored a lot of points. Every week in and week out, they found ways to score. So I put Love's on a decline because it was probably one of the worst interceptions I've ever seen. He literally just threw it right to Robert Spillane on the Raiders. So that was horrible. Really looked bad. Missed a lot of passes. There was a nice pass to Christian Watson that almost ended up in a touchdown, and there was a bad horse collar tackle at the end, but they had a lot of costly penalties. Didn't have a lot of penalties altogether, but it was one of those where when the penalty happened, it really hurt them. Pivotal down, whatever the case was. Couldn't finish the game like they were able to in weeks past against the Saints. So, a couple weeks ago, they make that massive comeback, win 18-17 on the Saints. Had a perfect opportunity to do it in this game. Weren't able to do it this time, and again, Jordan Love did not look good, especially against a Raiders team that the defense is basically Max Crosby. So, there's not a lot of other big-name, big-ticket guys out there. So, you would expect more out of a guy in Jordan Love. Maybe you do now because his expectations have been raised early on this year. But at least at this point, I think people are starting to expect more out of him. And he did not live up to those expectations. These notes I kind of put in as I was watching the game. I put in they're not using Josh Jacobs right. They were running him on very interesting downs. It just didn't really make sense. They were doing a lot of like fakes and then reverses and like end arounds and all this other stuff. And it was an interesting play calling by Josh McDaniels. And it was interesting to see some of these fun trick plays, but it really affected Josh Jacobs, who last year was their biggest weapon. And especially when you have, Jimmy G throws a costly interception himself. Could have used Josh Jacobs better in this game. And I think, if the Packers were able to finish and lose, I would be saying should have used Josh Jacobs more. So they're off the hook because is like a ghost makes noise in my room. That was really weird. It sounded like it was in my light. Josh Jacobs, we'd be talking about him if there was a loss. We'd be talking about why did we not give him the ball a little bit more. Give him in the ball in better situations, more or less, too. I put Max Crosby, who was just living in the backfield. He putting a lot of pressure on Jordan Love and kind of the Packers were running so many bootlegs, and I think it was just get Jordan Love away from Max Crosby. That was literally the reasoning. So there was like a stretch where there was like three bootlegs in a row, and then there was a drive where I bet at least 50% or more of the plays were bootlegs. And they put Devontae got going late because it was pretty much the Jacoby Myers show in the first half. And then Devontae started getting the ball, and that definitely helped. Showed potential for both of them. It kind of seemed like Jimmy G was zoning in on Jacoby Myers, and that opened up the way for Devontae, which is the opposite of what you would expect. You would expect he would just be targeting the shit out of Devontae Adams, and then, Jacoby Myers, he's a guy too. So Raiders end up getting the dub. I get this one wrong. It's whatever. Going to my record. We have this week, I go 8-6. I'm not very happy about it. There's a couple that I missed that I shouldn't have. Bringing my total record this season to 45-33. If I'm giving you bet advice, I wouldn't take it. I did say the money line for the Giants. I think you probably do that one just because it's a money line bet and they stink. But 38-40 against the spread is no good. So not great. Not very happy about it. Not much I can do except be better next week. This is what I was talking about earlier, the better rushing stat. So the team that ran the ball better and more efficiently, the way I do that is if they have more rushing yards and it's not an astronomical difference in yards per carry, I give that team the better rushing performance. And the team, and most of the time it's very clear as day, like, one team has 200 rushing yards and one has 50, or one has 150 and one has 30. Usually it's very clear, but again, if it's close, if it's like 80 and 70, but one's 5 yards a carry, one's 4, the one with 5 yards a carry is going to take it. That's kind of how I gauge it. So it's not very scientific at all, but that is not the point. The point is the team with the better rushing record has won so far this year 59 times and lost 19. So the more efficient run game is winning at a super high clip. You could make the argument that, well, when people go up and have a huge lead, like 49ers, they're just going to be running the ball. So, of course, their stats are going to look better. And that's why I factor in yards per carry. So if, with certain games like that one in particular, you look at, all their running in the first half was still significantly better, when it was a closer game. So 59-19, something to look out for if you're going to bet. If there's a team that's significantly better at running the ball, that isn't the Titans, the Bears, or the Falcons, because they account for most of those 19 points in there. I think almost every week that they've lost, they've gone into that column because they're very one-sided teams with running the ball. So interesting stat there. We'll move on to the leaders for this week. Week 5, Sam Howell just sweeps the quarterback other than the passer rating, 37 for 51, 388. Again, great week for him, just not great for the team getting the win. Brock Purdy almost throws a perfect game, 144 passer rating. ATN had 26 carries. Breece Hall had 177 yards. There should be a lot of honorable mentions on here because ATN had like 140 yards. Zach Moss had a phenomenal week. David Montgomery had a good week. So many good running backs this week. But these are just the leaders. Jamar Chase had the 15 receptions. DJ Moore with 230 on only 8 receptions is wild. Also 3 touchdowns for each of them, both in the thumbnail. Didn't mention George Kittle in the thumbnail for his, but they're all in there. Terrell Bernard, hadn't heard of this guy, I'm going to be honest. He's a Bills linebacker, and he got 19 tackles. Every week I look at the most tackles number, and I go, probably don't need to put that in there. But it fills up the page. Terrell Bernard, congratulations, you made they made the list. And then Zach Seiler. Didn't highlight his name with the light blue of that font, but that's all right. He's on the Dolphins, and didn't know that either. Didn't know he was on the Dolphins. He had 2 sacks, 3 TFLs. There's a lot of people that had 2 sacks. He just had the most TFLs, so he gets his name on my list. Dolphins dominated on offense. Saints were phenomenal on defense, holding the Patriots to 0 points and 0 red zone entries. And then the 49ers had the 4 takeaways on the Cowboys on Dak Prescott throwing the ball to the other team as he likes to do. Fun facts, we have Mahomes, first ever quarterback to beat all 31 teams before 30, and he's only 28, which is wild. But that is Patrick Mahomes, and you have to include Patrick Mahomes because that's what gets clicks. First time New England lost consecutive 30-point losses. That's not how that should say. Had consecutive 30-point losses since 1970. Which is horrible. And Bill Belichick is not very happy. His interviews after the game are very funny, but not great for them. Devon Achane with 7 touchdowns in his first 4 career starts is the most in the Super Bowl era. So that was a big, fun, important stat. And then Andres and Daniel Carlson are the first brothers to start at kicker since 1987. So in that Packers Raiders game, those are both the brothers. And there was a costly missed field goal in there too. So I'm sure that brotherly rivalry, there's going to be some talk about that. So that is the whole Week 5 recap. Went over all the games here. Back to the thumbnail. We got Kittle holding up the 3. Jamar Chase happier than hell. And DJ Moore is counting on his hands 1, 2, 3 for all of his scoring. Great game from him too. Lots of excitement this week. Lots of big plays. Achane, Tyreek Hill had a good one. You know, the 100-yard pick 6 on the Giants. So lots of exciting plays. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll have the picks video coming out soon. Power rankings. And I have a Coach's Hot Seat video in the works. So make sure to subscribe. Look out for that. And thank you. Have a great day.